All right, hello y'all. Welcome to our session. We're super excited to get started. You've probably seen the super fun forward-looking statement, so I'm not going to read this to you again. Legally, we have to show it. Welcome to behind the scenes of Cvent CONNECT's website and registration. I'm your host, Dara. I am on the event marketing team here at Cvent. Yes, the event marketing team that is working this very event. They let me out of the war room for today. So if you've seen any of the attendee comms, the push notifications, that's me and my team putting those together. So this is a fun little reprieve from all of that on-site madness.
And I'm Andres. I'm a senior web UX designer here at Cvent. I've been designing web experiences for around 3 years. I work on Cvent.com, Cvent Community, and of course, all of our favorites, Connect.
Woo! Okay, so here's a little bit about how Andreas and I work together and how the event marketing team is structured at Cvent. So we work on the business objectives first. That's always what's guiding us whenever we start our marketing planning. And then I work with all of our stakeholders across product and marketing to plan Cvent Connect. I'm the go-between translator between business objectives to what attendees want. And I work directly with our web and reg team to get our website stood up. So, we got a poll. This is why I have my phone up here. Before we get started, I would love to get your favorite pizza topping. I know this sounds random. Stick with me. It's all going to make sense. But if you guys can take out your phone and start answering that poll, hopefully everyone can see it. If you can't, let me know. All right, great. Give everyone a few minutes. My personal favorite is pepperoni, which I know is not an answer choice. What's your favorite, Andreas?
I think I agree, pepperoni, although I also love pineapple on pizza.
Unpopular.
Yup. Unpopular, but it is true.
All right, I'm going to give you guys 5 more seconds to answer. We have got an even split here. I really thought everyone was going to jump on the cheese. All right. So it looks like we have Hawaiian at 20%, cheese at 36%, meat lovers at 27%, and veggie at 16%. All right, now, keeping those results in mind, imagine you have to make a pizza party for everybody that's sitting in this room, and you need to make one really awesome pizza that everyone is going to like. And if you try to please everyone, you're going to end up with a really gross pizza and a really gross website, but we'll get to that. Hopefully you guys like my little Julia Solaris reference on here. A good pizza and a good website have a ton in common. Both prioritize simplicity. You're not trying to do too many things with it. You're focusing on 1 or 2 toppings, not a bunch of different messages. Both are personalized. Little personal pizza pun for you there. They don't try to please everyone, just their target audience, and both are excellent motivators. So both make people take action, whether that's registering for your conference or if you're earning pizza for reading books. I don't know if anybody participated in that from Pizza Hut. Might be showing my age here. So this is why you need a website strategy. You can't please everyone. You need to know who your target is, who your demographics are working, what do they like. And the 3 ways that we do that, the 3 ways you build out your website strategy, number 1, business objectives. So I talked about that a little bit earlier, but basically business objectives will be your North Star. What is your business trying to accomplish? Are they trying to focus more on getting new prospects? Are they trying to get customers? Once you have that data point, use that as your guiding star throughout your strategy. Then your quantitative data. This is things like how many registrants show up each year, how many people attended different types of sessions. This is going to give you really good behavioral insights. It's going to give you insights into how to plan your event. And then the third one is qualitative data. So this is things like that random feedback that you hear from an executive, all the way to feedback surveys and analyzing those to see what were the real thoughts and opinions, and those can be really great shapers of how you put together your strategy. So here's an example of the quantitative data that we look at for Cvent Connect. So this is registration and attendance data. So this is how we know how to position our messaging. We're literally looking at which verticals are in the room, which types of personas, what types of titles. This is how we can really tell what message is going to best resonate. Some of the things we look at are job role, persona, attendees per org, and then we also look at event behavior, which I mentioned earlier, which is things like what kind of sessions did people like, what kind of sessions did people not register for, that sort of thing. Then on the quantitative front, we also heavily analyze our promotional data. So when we look at our website, we're looking at what are the sources of traffic. So where are people coming from? What messages are resonating with them? We do a ton of A/B testing on our messaging for email, for paid digital, all of the things. This is a really good way to get that data of what message are resonating and then use those top performing messages on your website. And then qualitative. So this is all of that lovely feedback that I talked about before. I bucket this into 3 groups. One is your internal stakeholders. So you have your advising. So these are people like your executives who, yes, you do care about their opinion, but they're not necessarily the ones executing. You want to make sure you sorry. I didn't know if that was a session or if it was my phone or what. Okay, great. You want to make sure you're capturing feedback from them. Make sure you know what's a priority for them as you're going into next year. Then for your executing group, this is your people actually doing the work, your subject matter experts. It is so important to make sure you get all of your execution team's feedback. Your website team, your creative team, you want to make sure you're getting what they like and dislike out of the event too, not just your executives and other people that are not a part of the execution process, because they're going to give you insight on both process, and then they're also subject matter experts in their field. And then lastly, I think this is the most important bucket, external stakeholders or attendees, the people that are actually filling the butts and seats in your room. You definitely want to make sure you're reviewing the feedback survey from them, capturing their data, collecting all of it, and analyzing. So what do we do with all this that we just analyzed? You want to put this into one source of truth, which is your project and messaging brief. I like to document everything, and I am meticulous. So I'm going to take all of that great registration and attendance data, all of that great qualitative data, put it into one brief that covers both the business objectives, which is that North Star that you guys are all shooting for, and then what your summary of your data is, and messaging briefs for each pillar of your audience. And that will give you your design priorities. This is how you're going to decide how and what to prioritize on your website, because you know that North Star, you know who you're trying to talk to. Everything makes just a little bit more sense. So starting in 2022, this is how we have evolved the website over time for Cvent Connect. We started by adding in more persona info. So that sounds pretty basic, but basically what we did was we started customizing the website to be more accurate towards each persona and simplify some of our reg types and paths.
In 2023, we introduced a video header, which allowed attendees to see what it is that happens on the actual event and made our website a little bit more immersive. We also made a huge commitment to accessibility. That way, our website is as accessible as possible to as many people as possible. In 2024, we also introduced a strategic use of custom code. It's very easy to want to custom code everything because we have this notion of, oh, code is cool. But there are a lot of things that you can do with native widgets. And so if we could build something with native widgets, let's build it with native widgets. And then we also introduced Marketo integrations.
And then 2025, this year, we introduced even more behind-the-scenes segmentation in Reg, which I'll walk you through. And then our main goal this year with the website, more photos, less text. And then you'll see under 2026, we haven't really gotten there yet. We still have data analyzed. We haven't even wrapped this event yet, but you will see a surprise starting tomorrow. There will be a new website coming out soon that you may see, and we'll have even more iterations coming out in the future. So just a couple quick tips. Now, I am not necessarily a event technologist, but this is how I think about registration. One, making sure that I have the critical information. What fields are needed to hit my event goals? What info can be collected later? So like their session information, can we move that to Attendee Hub? And then also, how can we make this most efficient? So the thing that I hate the most is having people land on my website and not convert. So I want to make the process as seamless for them as possible throughout registration. Then the last thing, thinking ahead. What are you going to need later from your attendees that you might need to include in Reg now? And I'll give some examples of what those things might be. But I also wanted to share that there's a session that's just a total Reg deep dive happening tomorrow. So that might be a really good fit if you want to dive super deep into these topics. So this is a little behind the scenes of how we built our segments in Reg. So what we did this year, which was very important, was we gave people self-selected interest in Reg. So what that means was we had them self-identify when they went through Reg, hey, I'm interested in sessions about travel, for example. And then that way we could then promote to them later travel sessions, because we had found over years that we could never promote some of these sessions that we wanted to promote because we didn't have information from the attendees about what they were looking for. We could make guesses about their title and their organization, but we didn't necessarily have their specific interest in Reg. So here's how it works. If there's a person like Jane here, who is a third-party agency, and she's a marketer, she is going to receive information both about being invited to Partner Summit, which is a TPP-only event, and then she's also going to be part of a segment that allows her to receive push notifications about marketer sessions. And then maybe she's also an Excellence Awards finalist, so she's going to receive a finalist email about Excellence Awards. So this is what it actually looks like in practice. We add this question in reg, which is where you can see they can select their preferences. And then this is actually in the back end of Cvent how we use this data. We're plugging in that segment information and then also adding the reg type, and that's how we will send out this email or the push notification or any segmentation that we need. Now I want to walk you through a couple of our website highlights from this year and share a couple of things that we did to make our website a little bit more strategic and user-friendly.
So arguably, one of the most important things that you want to do is create trust with your attendees. So this year, we introduced stats, which allowed us to use statistics from last year in order to create a little bit of that trust. That we have stats like 91% of our attendees learned that they better use the Cvent platform at Cvent CONNECT. 96% of attendees agreed that they got new ideas at Cvent CONNECT. And 89% of the attendees agreed that the networking opportunities at Cvent CONNECT allowed them to advance their career. We also introduced the quote carousel, which allowed us to use quotes from years past in order to create a little bit of that trust and some FOMO.
And then we also introduced another level of social proof. And if you guys don't know what social proof is, it is where you can see other people that look or sound like you or in your same job role. And it's a psychological concept, basically. When you see other people that are like you doing those things, you innately want to do those things yourself. So one of the ways that we did social proof this year was through video social proof. So we have videos on the Event Professional Attendee Guide that are other event professionals. And we've customized those by different job role and title so that when you land on a page, it's your exact persona talking to you. We also added logos from the organizations to give that extra little bit of FOMO.
So the agenda at a glance was another huge focus for us this year. Last year, in 2024, we had a full custom code agenda. The problem with this is that if users can click into each section and elongate the page, then it takes away from the idea of an agenda at a glance. So this year, we built it natively with Site Designer widgets and gave everybody a bird's eye view of that agenda at a glance. I want to reiterate here that good custom code does not always equal a good user experience.
And then this is just a little bit, we already touched on this a little bit, but more photos, less text. We really wanted, no one is going to read paragraphs and paragraphs of text, but we wanted them to really feel the experience of Cvent CONNECT. So when we have things like networking or sessions, we wanted to show people exactly what that meant.
So now we're going to dive into a couple of UX best practices. For those who don't know, UX stands for user experience, and all it is the experience that your user has when they land on your web page. That's what your web page looks like, what your web page feels like, how easy is it for them to achieve what they came to your website to achieve.
I'll start us off with this one, my favorite. I just referenced it, skimming. People do not fully read your website. So everything on your website should be very skimmable. You want things to be in big, bold letters that people can easily find. And what I love about this screenshot over here is really that even though it's so zoomed out, you can still see all of the headers. And it's just a perfect example of how your website should look because you need to be able to find the information you're looking for as quickly as possible. So a couple ways you can do this. Make sure that your headlines are short. You don't want your headlines being more than 10 words. And then you also want to create clear hierarchies. So make sure those headers are nice and big in comparison to the body.
Like I mentioned before, in 2023, we made a huge commitment to accessibility, and we want to make sure that we do that year over year. Making your websites accessible benefits all of your users, not just the ones with disabilities. Here are a couple of examples that we can do to make sure that your website is accessible. The first one is to use descriptive CTAs. A CTA is a call to action, and those are those blue links that when you click on them, they take you somewhere else on the page or carry out an action. So there's a couple of things that we do here. You'll see here that we have a section that says build your business case with 3 links right underneath. The first thing we want to do is tell the user what happens when I click this. So we'll use the word download to tell them when I click this, it's going to download a file. Then I'm going to tell them which file they're downloading. I have 3 different ones here. I have an event professional template, I have a marketer's template, and I also have a hospitality professionals template. Finally, I want to tell them what type of file they're downloading. In this case, it's a Word document, so I'll put in parentheses .docx. Then you want to make sure that you have enough color contrast on your website. You want to make sure that anybody with any kind of visual disabilities can still read the words on your website. This means making your background light enough and your text dark enough in order to read that content on the web page. And then finally is to add alt text to your images. Recently, Site Designer released a feature that requires alt text on all of your images. If it's an image that is only for decorative purposes, then you go ahead and mark that as yes. But if not, then you're going to go ahead and write a descriptive description for your image. And there's 2 main reasons you want to do this. The first one is for anybody with a visual deficiency comes to your website and they're using any kind of screen reader. That screen reader reads to them what is going on in the photo That way they're not missing out to what they can expect at the actual event. The second reason is that sometimes technology malfunctions and internet can be slow. So if for some reason your web page doesn't load correctly, users will still be able to read that description and understand what's going on your web page.
Love that tip. I have a good meme here about plain language, and I will say we here at Cvent are not always the best at practicing this, but this is definitely something we're trying to get a lot better at, and something that I aim for. We want to use plain language, so this is a user experience principle here. We want to have all, for both accessibility reasons and user experience, you want to have all language be 8th grade reading level. So you want to write like you're talking to somebody at a barbecue. You don't really want to talk in a formal way. You want to avoid jargon and acronyms and just use simple language. So here's an example of what that sort of simple language can look like. It's short, it uses really like elementary language. It's not anything that's jargony, and it's gonna make it more easy to read and comprehend for your users.
And the last one we want here is that you wanna make sure that your website has a nice, clean layout. To make sure you have nice, clean layouts, we'll use something called the 8-point grid system. What this is that all of the values that you choose for your spacing have values that are divisible by 8. And there's main reasons that we do this. The first one is that it's gonna define relationships with other elements. So you see here that we have a heading of discover our all-in-one solutions, and right underneath we have that description. When we put these two together, we give it a little bit of spacing around 8 pixels, and then when we introduce that second heading of grow your hospitality business, we want just a little bit more spacing to differentiate it from the one on the top. So we'll use around 32 pixels. Then, when you're creating a whole new section underneath, you want even more spacing. We'll use something like around 64 pixels. The best part about this is it keeps all of your elements organized, and it takes the guesswork out of choosing your values. So instead of taking that blue slider, moving it around left and right, eyeballing, that looks good, you don't need to do that anymore. If all of your elements have consistent spacing, your website is gonna look clean.
And once you see this, like you can't unsee it. Andrea showed me this, and now I use it for everything, not just websites, like emails, everything. Everything is 8 points now.
All right, so now we're gonna get into a little bit of a more advanced CSS topic. I'm gonna send out a quick poll to you guys, and I want you guys to take that poll. And that poll is, what do you guys think CSS stands for?
Oh, here you go.
Thank you. All right, so we're getting a lot of responses. And you guys are very smart. I'm seeing a lot of cascading styling sheets, which is what it stands for. I was hoping that you guys would choose cascading stress sheets because they can be stressful. However, hopefully after this, it won't be as stressful. So let's talk CSS. First of all, what does it stand for? You guys got this all right. CSS stands for cascading style sheets. And all it is, it's a style sheet that tells your browser how to display an element. When you write these styles, they cascade one over the other. You're gonna see here in just a moment. With these CSS styles, you can change the look of nearly anything on your website. So before we get into how to write them, let's understand the difference between custom code and CSS, because sometimes these can get used interchangeably. CSS is a type of code, but when you drive in or drag in your custom code widget into Site Designer, it's gonna ask you to code 3 different things. It's gonna ask you to code the HTML, which is the content of your website. That's anything from your headers to your paragraphs to your images. Then it's gonna ask you to code the CSS for it, which is the styling. It's what those headings look like. What does the paragraph look like? Are you changing your image? And then finally, it's gonna ask you to code the JavaScript. The JavaScript is any kind of functionality that happens within that widget. So are users clicking on anything? Is it sending information to the back end? Are there any animations that are within this custom code widget? And when you code all of these 3 together, things can get a little bit complicated. So if you just single out the CSS, things get a whole lot simpler. Here's an example of this year's Cvent CONNECT 2025 website. I'm sure you guys have all seen it since you're sitting here, with CSS and without CSS. So you'll see on the left that there's no CSS applied, and our website is still fully functional. You have your navigation, you have a video header, and you have the counter. But when you apply CSS, you can spruce your website up a little bit. You can see that on the right side, we have the navigation, which is now inside of the video header. You have site elements, and we do some widget layering with the counter. So how do we write a CSS style? You'll also see this commonly referred as to a CSS class, and it has 3 different parts. You have your name, which is gonna allow you to reference that class on any of your widgets. Then you have your property, which is gonna define how you want to change that widget. and then your value, which is going to determine how you want to change that property. And we put them together in this structure. We'll start with a period, and then define your class name. Your class name can be anything that you want it to, because all it's used for is to reference it inside of a widget. I like to keep mine simple and name them with what the CSS class is going to do. Then we're going to open up a curly bracket, and we're going to write a property. You're going to write your property, and then you're going to end it with a colon to define it. Then you're going to add your value, and then end that as well with a semicolon. When you're done writing your class, you're going to close that off with another curly bracket. The best part about all this is you're already using it. It's just laid out a little bit different. When you go into style a widget, and you see that applied style at the top to choose your header 1, header 2, that's a class name. And when you click on that class name, it's pulling in various properties and values. You can see right underneath when we make the changes, that font family, that's a property. That's what you want to change about that text widget. The value, the type of font, that's how you're changing the font family. It's the same thing with font weight, your font size, your text color, your alignment. If you were to take these and you were to write them in CSS, this is what it would look like. You have your period with your class name, you open your curly bracket, and then you start writing your properties and values. Like you saw before, your property of font family, and then brand and text. Your font weight with another colon, and then your value of extra black with a colon, a semicolon. Then you have font size, 36 pixels. The color of your text, pound 495 E70. Quick tip, never make your text full black because it's too much contrast and it makes your website a little bit hard to read. Text align and then center. When you're done writing that class, you close it off with another curly bracket. And when you write it this way, you can see that the styles cascade over each other. So I want you to keep this in mind. You can use CSS for anything visual. If you can think it, you can write CSS for it. Here's a couple of properties that we use on our Cvent CONNECT 2025 website, and we're going to jump into these a little bit later. The first one is position. Do you want to change where your widget is? Do you want to move it around? The width, how wide is your property? Display, this lets you change the layout. Are elements next to each other? Are they on top or the bottom of each other? Border radius, do you want to round out those corners? This is a native style inside of Site Designer. The difference with CSS is you can change the individual corners if you wanted to. Letter spacing, do you want your letters to be a little bit further apart, a little bit closer together? Then box shadow, do you want to add shadow into your elements in order to make them pop off the page and give it a little bit of dimension? So now how do you add them to your website? You're going to go into your Site Designer and go into the Themes panel. Then you're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and click on CSS Classes. Then you're going to see a text box, and this is where we're going to insert all of our CSS. I have two examples here. I hope they're big enough for you to read, but the first example is just a structure. Period, name of the class, curly bracket, property, colon, a value, semicolon, and then close off with a curly bracket. Right underneath, I have a real example of how do we make a widget full width. So you'll see here that I have a period, and then I gave it a name of full width because when I apply this, it's going to take that widget and make it full width. I'm going to open a curly bracket and write a property of width, close that off with a colon, and then write the value of 100% because in this case, I want that widget to take 100% of the container space. Semicolon, and then close it off with another curly bracket. So now that they're inside your Site Designer and you've applied them, how do you assign it to the actual widget? You can click on a widget or a section, scroll down, and you're going to see a CSS dropdown. Inside of this dropdown is you're going to find those classes that you've written inside of your Site Designer. So finally, how did we use CSS on Cvent CONNECT 2025? I have 3 examples to show you, and they're going to get progressively harder, but hopefully by the end of this, you can adapt them and use them on your website. The first one is font styling. This year, we went all caps with our text and made them just a little bit bolder. The issue here is that when you have so many titles, your website can start to feel a little bit cramped, and you don't necessarily want that. So we want to add some letter spacing in between each of the letters. Let's write some CSS for it. You're going to start with a period and give it that name. In this case, I'm naming it heading spacing because when I apply it, I just want to reference it as, hey, when I apply this, it's going to change the spacing of your headings. Then you're going to open the curly bracket, and we're going to use a property of letter-spacing. Close that off with a colon, and then the value, we're going to use something around 1.5 pixels. You don't want to put too much spacing in between your letters because you still want them to look like they correspond with each other, but just enough to give it that little bit of breathing room. Close off that value with a semicolon and a curly bracket, and then you can apply that to all of your headings on your web page. The next one is layering position. How do we move a widget to layer on top of our video header? In this case, we're going to write 2 CSS classes. And I want you to keep in mind that you can apply as many CSS classes to one widget as many times as you'd like. So for the first one, we're going to write something called position relative. So I'll start with a period. I'll name this class position-relative. I'll open my curly bracket, and we're going to use a property of position. Again, position tells it, hey, I want to be able to move you. Close that off with a colon, and then the value that we're going to give this is something called relative. What this says is when I do move you, I want you to move in relativity to the other widgets around it. In simple terms, it says don't change anything else. I'm only moving this one widget. We'll close that off with a semicolon and another curly bracket. And what you'll see is if you just apply this one class, nothing's going to happen because we've told it, hey, I want to move you, but we haven't told it how we're going to move you. That's what that second class is for. I'll start again by adding a period, and we'll give it a class name of position-counter. And I'm naming it this because I'm going to apply this just to my counter. Then I'm going to open a curly bracket, and I'm going to give it a property of top. You can also use a property of left, right, or bottom. This just tells it when I move this, where am I moving it from? We'll close that off with a colon. And then I'm going to add a value of -150 pixels. Again, because we're moving this from the top, if we were to add a positive value, it's going to add 150 pixels of spacing from the top. So it's going to shift it downwards. And we don't want that. We want it to go upwards. So we'll use -150 pixels. And again, remember to close that off with a curly bracket and apply your CSS. The last one is alignment. How do we align some of these elements to the center of the page or to the bottom of the page? This one gets a little bit more complicated, but stick with me. We're going to use something called a CSS selector. When you write your class name, you're going to use a little right-facing caret, and then you're going to type the word div. Div is short for division, and what you're telling it is that when I apply this class, I want you to apply it to all of these divisions. So what is a division? A division is another word for a piece of content on your website. So you'll see here the sponsored Cvent CONNECT section. That is one division. The image next to it, that's another division. So again, when you go back to this class and you apply it, it's going to say, hey, I want you to apply these properties and values to both the sponsored Cvent CONNECT section and the image right next to it. So now that we've told it that, we want to write 2 properties and 2 values to achieve this. The first one is display. When you choose display, it's going to tell it, hey, I'm making some changes to this layout. Then we're going to close that off with a colon and add the value of flex. What flex does is it tells all of your widgets, I want you to be right next to each other. When you apply just display and flex to a widget, again, it's not going to do anything apparent because your widgets are already next to each other. But it opens up the door for that second property and value that we're going to add. The first property is align-items, and this tells it, I want you to take all of the items within this section, and we're going to align them. Close it off with a colon, and then we're going to add a value of center. And what center does, you guessed it, it's going to move all of those items to the center of the section. Close it off with a semicolon and a curly bracket, and then apply it. You can also use things like align-items and then a value of end, and that takes all of your elements and shifts them towards the bottom. And you can do it with align-items and then a value of start, and that adds all your elements to the top. But this is the default view, so you're probably already familiarized with this one. That's the last one I had for you today, but if any of this is still confusing or you want to dive deeper and learn a little bit more, please feel free to find me after this session. I want to help you out and maybe help you apply some of these to your websites.
All right, thanks so much, Andreas. Andreas is just the freaking website master, so thank you so much for giving us that behind the scenes. I'm like, I just give him all the text and content. I'm like, okay, do something with it. He did a great job. So we would love to get your feedback. As I said a little bit earlier, this is not feedback on the session. This is actually feedback on our 2025 website, because we are looking for how we can elevate the Cvent CONNECT brand in the future. And so we really want to get the opinion of you guys, the attendees, especially all of you guys, since you guys are interested in reg and web design. So we would love to get your opinion, or you can come talk to us after this, or DM us on the mobile app, or DM us on LinkedIn. Just find us one way or another and give us your opinion, and we would love that. So I think now we have a little bit of time for Q&A. So we're happy to take any questions that you guys have. We're actually going to be taking Q&A through the mobile app. So if you guys can submit your questions that way, we will be able to see what you guys ask. Oh, someone already submitted a question.
Yay.
Okay. Are you able to share some of the CSS codes used to design Cvent Connect's website as a PDF?
I would probably have to try and get permission for it, but I would be very happy to do it and send it out to you guys. Again, if you want to meet with me, like right out here or in Innovation Pavilion, I will help you write these and apply them to your website.
Okay, I see two super easy questions that I think we can answer. Is it possible to get a copy of the slides? Absolutely. These will be available in the mobile app for you, I think within about 24 hours after. Yeah, okay. And then do you also build the app and Attendee Hub websites? My team is really responsible for everything that's on the mobile app, so anything related to the app and Attendee Hub event marketing build. So we build out the banners, we build out the push notifications, we do all of the custom cards, that's our team. All of the site designer and the reg website externally is Andreas's team. And then someone asked, is there a list of key CSS codes within the Cvent community?
Within Cvent community, we can probably start a discussion and see what other attendees are doing in terms of CSS. I know that there's a lot of people that are in there and writing code for different widgets on Foresight Designer. So we can probably reach out to our amazing community and see if we're willing to do some kind of collaboration on community to share these codes out with you.
Okay. Okay, are the spacer widgets in Cvent already following the 8-point grid system?
They are not. They default to 15. And I want them to change it, and it's a piece of feedback that we've implemented. I'm gonna put a little quick note here. It defaults to 15, and even though I didn't mention it when we were on that slide, the reason you don't want this number to not be divisible by 8 is if you just leave it on 15, and then you add another widget, and you want to say, hey, I want this widget to be half of the size. What's half of 15? 7.5. We can't put decimal points inside of Site Designer. So what I like to do is for all my widgets, although it's a little bit tedious, I like to make them all 16 and work off of that so that if I do need something that's, hey, I want this widget, but I want it to be double the width, I take that 16 and I double it to 32, or vice versa, I'll just divide that number by 2 and get 8.
Awesome. And then we got another one, your agenda at a glance. This is not built with the agenda at a glance widget. Is it just made with a column section? Are there any enhancements planned for the agenda at a glance widget? I can answer part of this and then I'll let you answer the second part. For agenda at a glance widget, the reason why we don't use the native one is just because of how complex our agenda is at Cvent Connect. And we also love to be highly customized. So we really enjoy doing more of the customization aspect of that. But I will let you answer about the columns and how you built it.
Yeah, so for the agenda at a glance, we used a 4-column layout, which is coincidental because our event spans from Monday through Thursday. However, inside of each of those days, we did use container widgets. And so it was really easy to use these container widgets because I would put what the date is, what the time is, what that session is, and then a small divider, and I'm able to duplicate that container widget and put it underneath and also add those to the other dates on the website.
Another question we got, I think I can answer this one well. We struggle to get feedback from attendees. Any suggestions on how to encourage attendees to complete and provide, feedback? So feedback surveys, yes, these are super important to us, and this is a really helpful area for us. One of the things that we do is we make sure that we have the feedback survey everywhere. So hopefully you guys have been inundated with the feedback survey as you're going through your comms. They're in our daily comms, so we send a daily comm at the end of every single day, both to our in-person and virtual audience. The feedback survey module is also on our Attendee Hub and mobile app at the top at the end of the day. And then we do incentivize the feedback survey, especially for our in-person attendees. We just really value that feedback. So we do a $7 gift card. We upped it a little bit this year since inflation. We're doing a gift card for people that take the in-person survey. And then for our virtual group, we're doing a raffle. So there's a bunch of hotels that have generously donated some hotel room nights. And so we're doing a raffle for people that participate in the feedback survey. One other great thing to do is to do a push notification at the end of your event. That's thank you for coming, and direct them straight to that feedback survey. Keep going. Does a novice-friendly widget or guide exist for CSS within the Cvent website build?
A novice, repeat it? Repeat it?
Oh, sorry. Does a novice-friendly widget or guide exist for CSS within the Cvent website build?
There is, I believe, an article on Cvent Community under our knowledge base that introduces you a little bit more into how to write CSS for it. You'll find topics similar to what I presented here today.
Cool.
And I can share out those links a little bit later.
Yeah, we can share. Okay, this is a good one. How do you decide what hills you die on and decide that you will push back on? Example, we need to feed people box lunch on Monday so we can include more activities on an evening. So I can't speak a lot to like the planning design decisions about the conference, so I can't really speak to the food aspect, but in terms of like website content or email content or working with stakeholders, the reason why I spend so much time putting together my messaging brief, gathering the data, making sure that I'm analyzing things, is that I have that document that's like, no one can argue with the numbers. Like we can look at our numbers and say, this is what our attendees liked or didn't like. No one on our website is gonna wanna see content about this because no one on site wanted to see content about this. So I think really as much as you can lean into the numbers and data available to you and make sure that you're really taking the time to put together a really clean reference document. I know it's so time consuming. I do it every year for this event, and I think it's really important to not only create that document, but get your stakeholders buy-in on it and share it widely with them. Share it all the time. I always point people back to my project brief and say, hey, it's in here, here's the data from this year. So that would be my answer. Do you have an answer for that one? Or you want?
I can shift the question a little bit and give a little bit more context into what hills do I die on. I try not to die on many hills. I'm always focusing on what is the best user experience, right? So if it's something that's gonna have an effect on what you guys see on the website or how the website functions, then yes, I'm gonna push back against it. But then there are also times where things are just purely opinion. And if that's the case, I gather consensus on what the best path forward is and try and find like either an alternate solution to maybe what Dara wants, but add a little bit of that, hey, this is gonna be better for our users.
Yeah, we have a really collaborative relationship, which I think is good. Like Andres will tell me, hey, your content's too long. You need to shorten it. It's not gonna look good. So I think there's sometimes where you need to have that pushback from the people that you work with and have that trust relationship where you can be like, if I give you something that doesn't work, please tell me and don't just run with exactly what I said. So yeah. I think building those relationships with your designers is really important.
But like the best part to go about it is that if Dara tells me like, hey, I want to do this on our website and it's not the best experience for the user, it's not about me telling Dara, hey, no, like we're not going to do that, right? It's one, explaining why it's not a good idea. And then two, coming up with a solution and presenting her both ideas. Hey, Dara, here's how you wanted it. And then here's the better solution for our users. And we try and knock out that same goal just with a different solution.
And most of the time, his idea was the better one in the long run. Okay, this is a good one. What was your favorite aspect of this year's website?
That is a really hard question. My favorite aspect is can I go back on here actually? Because there is a slide that I had the differentiation between no CSS and CSS. Oh, right here. That part that says side elements, that was done with CSS, and we're able to push elements to the side of the web page. And what I did is that typically what you guys build on Site Designer is very sectionated. Like it's one block of content, then a second block of content, and you can only choose one background color. And so that makes it feel like your website is just very blocky. So I introduced these side elements with CSS in order to lead you into the next section and make the website just a little more immersive.
Okay, I'm not scrolling on my phone, guys. I'm reading through your questions. I promise I'm not just like texting up here. You guys upvote the ones that there's a lot of really good ones in here, so upvote if there's ones that you want me to do more of or focus on. One of the things that somebody asked was how early do you start building the event app for Cvent Connect? I can answer that one. We usually start about a month out, and then we start promoting to our attendees about 2 weeks out. So we really don't. We do a month out for our mobile app, but I will say Attendee Hub we've had built since March. And really your Attendee Hub is almost your entire mobile app experience. If you're designing for Attendee Hub, you're also designing for mobile app. So we've had everything up on Attendee Hub for people able to build starting around March, but then we start promoting it as the mobile app in the last 2 weeks, start getting people to download because it really helps with the on-site experience. We got a question of, is there a way to anchor link an entire section without adding text so we can hyperlink to it from an email? Example, if we want to link to a speaker session but don't want to add text that shows like speaker section. I don't know if I 100% understand this question, but feel free to come up to us afterwards and we will help answer. Okay, I'll do 1 or 2 more.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Let me see which has the most upvotes. So some people want to know about implementing a video header in their event website. Do you have any advice?
So the video header is a custom code that we used. And so what happened there is when I drag in that custom code widget, we go in and we tell it, hey, I want to display this video and make this video as large as possible. When I do that, it's going to confine it to just that one widget, and then we added CSS on top of it to make sure that it expands to the entire website. I don't want to get too in the weeds of how to implement the video because it goes back into that slide with the HTML. And when you start doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, things can get a little bit complex. But what I will say is that it's very easy to take a custom code widget and just insert a video and have that video display. Where things could get a little bit more complex is when you want to start layering text and buttons on top of that video. It uses a similar concept to one of the slides where I showed position of relative, and that position relative tells it like, hey, I want to mess around with like how some of these elements move, but it's in relativity to like all the other widgets. There's another value that we use called position absolute. And what absolute does is that it takes that widget out of the equation, and then it layers all the other widgets on top of it. And so that's how we got all those buttons on top of the video and also the text.
Okay, I'll do one more question because I think this is a really good one. How long did it take us to build the Connect 2025 website?
It really, honestly, all depends on how much time Dara gives me. I like to have plenty of time. I'm a pixel peeper. I like to make sure that things are perfect. And when I have more time, then I can make sure that everything is like perfect. But if I had to give like a true answer, I want to say it's around like a 2-month turnaround time. But that's just planning, the research that we do. We also do like wireframing, making sure that the layout that we want to build is the one that we want to publish to our attendees. And once we do that in that 2-month time frame, then we send it out to various stakeholders in order to approve that website and make sure that it is good for you guys to go on and learn about the event.
And our process is very iterative too. So you'll see we have a V1 version of our website that goes out, and then we'll have V2 and V3 and V4. As some of our event milestones go on, as we get more content from our planners, as we learn more about what the event's gonna look like. So especially for this year, what we're building with 2026, it's very much a V1, and we're gonna come back and do V2, V3 afterwards. But that's kind of the best part, is we're always iterating, always trying to get better.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.